I want to talk more about this story. We're joined on set by Claude Blanchemaison, who's the former French ambassador to Russia. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24.
Thank you.
Putin was kind of damned if he did, damned if he didn't, wasn't he? Because if he did go to these talks, he would have undermined his false narrative about Zelensky and the Ukrainian government being illegitimate. But by staying at home, he gives another chance for the Ukrainians to say, hey, look, Russia's not serious about peace.
Well, he made this proposal in the late night after the 9th of May, this proposal of a negotiation, direct negotiation between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul. But he didn't mention a summit. He said a negotiation. And when the US President Donald Trump asked Zelensky to go to Istanbul, Zelensky said, okay, you asked me to, I go. But I want to meet Putin there. And of course, Putin has no interest in going there because what he wants to do is to establish technical negotiation in Istanbul between a Ukraine delegation and a Russian delegation, taking the same place and probably the same scope as the negotiation which took place in March 22, just after the beginning of the war. So, which is not a very good sign, is that instead of Putin, the head of the Russian delegation will be Mr. Medinsky. Well, the good thing is that he's a close advisor of Putin, he's working in the Kremlin, but the bad news is that he's a hardliner, and he was already the head of the Russian delegation in March 22, the negotiation which failed. So it's not a very good news to have Mr. Medinsky as the head of the Russian delegation, plus with him the head of the military intelligence, which is also, of course, a hardliner, military intelligence, plus a vice minister of defense ministry and a vice minister of foreign ministry. But those ministries have maybe 6 vice ministers. So it's not a very high level delegation with at the head of it rather hardliner. He has been Minister of Culture. Well, in Russia, it's rather Minister of Propaganda, and he has been doing that for 8 years. He was very, very hard, and he was a specialist in censoring films and different also theater, and he was not very well considered as a culture minister by intellectuals in Russia.
So do you think that's a message that Putin is sending by sending only deputy ministers, not even actual ministers?
Well, I think the message is that he wants to have technical negotiations which are going to take a long time because he's always trying to win time because he thinks that time is working for him, in fact. And after all, his military are not making very big progress, but still they are making few small progress. And therefore, as far as the ceasefire is concerned, for instance, he doesn't want to accept 30 days ceasefire without any condition, unconditional ceasefire, which has been proposed by Western countries, by the US, by the Western countries, and by Zelensky. He doesn't want to accept, he wants to negotiate the conditions, technical conditions of the ceasefire. And maybe Mr. Medinsky will propose that it should be the first chapter of this negotiation. But therefore, it will be a very technical negotiation. They will have to call for military people to discuss on the technical points, because on about more than 1,000 kilometers, the troops, Ukrainian troops and Russian troops, are intricated, in fact, on the line of control, of the line which will be the line of the ceasefire. So they probably will say, we don't want an unconditional ceasefire, we want to negotiate the technical condition of the ceasefire.
Earlier you mentioned US President Donald Trump and his calls for Zelensky to accept this meeting in Istanbul. Trump himself had floated the idea that he might go if Putin did. Do you think that his presence would have made a big difference?
Well, I'm not sure, because Putin was, in fact, decided not to make very political, drastic move. He wants to have these technical negotiations which are going to take time. That's why he's sending this kind of delegation. But therefore, on the spot, there is also an American delegation. One of the questions will be to do what? Are they going to take part in the negotiation between Ukraine and Russia? Or are they going to be in separate place, in separate room, to be at hand in case, and to have a separate negotiation, separate discussion with Ukraine and separate negotiation with Russia? We don't know yet. This problem has to be settled by Turkey, which is after all the host country, and which will be also in the room. So in the room, we don't know yet whether there will be only two delegations, or two delegations plus the Turkish delegation as the host, or those three delegations plus the American delegation, which wants to mediate. And as you know, the Secretary of State Rubio is there, plus the two special representatives of the President of the United States, Trump, Mr. Witkoff, who is a very close associate of Mr. Trump, and also General Kellogg, which is supposed to be special envoy for Ukraine.
So there's still a lot of unknowns, clearly, about this meeting in Istanbul.
Absolutely.
Do you have an idea of what things could be possible that come out of this? For example, we're hearing reports of a possible prisoner exchange.
Either the Ukraine delegation will ask for unconditional ceasefire now, without going further in the technical negotiations, and I think that will be all. Negotiation will stop there. Or the American delegation will push Ukraine to enter in technical negotiation, and then it will be the beginning of a very, very long negotiation, several weeks, maybe several months.
Indeed. I mean, where would these two sides even begin to really negotiate peace? Because one side is going to have to make, or both sides are going to have to make territorial concessions. Where do you think those concessions could come from, or who might make them?
I think the territorial points will come at the very end of the negotiation. First of all, many items have to be negotiated. First of all, the condition, technical negotiation of the ceasefire, and a very difficult question which has not been raised up to now, which is who will monitor the ceasefire? Which neutral country, which troops will monitor this ceasefire? And as the line of ceasefire will be very long, 1,200 kilometers, so it needs to bring it will have to bring there a lot of people to monitor the ceasefire correctly. Then, of course, the Ukrainian will say probably today we have also another precondition, which is the return of the children that have been brought to Russia from Ukraine by force to become Russian children. And of course, it's a crime against humanity, and Ukraine will insist to have them to be brought back. And it will be a difficult question also. Probably they will need the help of some UN agency, United Nations agency, to settle this matter. Therefore, also for the ceasefire, maybe at a certain point, they will realize that they need the United Nations introduction in the negotiation to monitor this ceasefire.
And what do you think? I mean, we just heard from our Ukrainian correspondent about how Ukrainians are viewing all of this. How do you think this is being received by the people of Russia? Talks of a ceasefire, negotiations, things like that?
Well, I think mixed feeling, because probably people of Russia are happy to have a negotiation with a perspective of peace, of course. But of course, they are under strong propaganda from Kremlin, and they believe in the story which has been built up by Kremlin. So they believe that there are still some Nazi in power in Ukraine, and the Second World War is not yet finished, which is the story that Putin has built up, and which is always referring to. And Bedinsky, who is also, well, he has been for a very short time a diplomat, but thereafter has been a historian with, he wrote a thesis on false history on Russia between 15th century and 18th century. And there have been a lot of controversy with a professional historian saying that he was not himself a real historian, and he was telling stories about that. So I think that is going to be difficult.
All right. Thank you very much, Claude Blanchemaison, for your analysis. You are, of course, the former French ambassador to Russia. We're going to be keeping an eye on that meeting in Istanbul to see what comes out of it.